The child discovered a gap in the fence and made her way into the unoccupied area. In little time at all, she was discovered by the crocodiles. Soon enough, she was encircled. It was 1953 back then. In addition, a crocodile farm had just opened for business. There was a buzz all throughout town. The rumor that these were really national tours with wild animals spread over a long period of time. It seems that the public was given the opportunity to get up and personal with a tamed crocodile. While this was certainly not the first reptile exhibition ever held in the U's, the idea was certainly novel to the locals. Quite a few households looked into it. You'll notice mostly young folks, male and female, and newborns as you go around the attraction. This group of young people was eager to take use of the unusual possibilities presented by the touring performance. Visitors may even feed crocodiles in some of the cages. Only a few brave kids even tried to physically engage the little reptiles. Individuals may even pay to ride one of these beasts, like at a fair or a winter bazaar. We were swamped with possibilities. A couple had shown in one day with their little daughter Nancy, who was 5 years old and as curious as any other small kid her age. The parents had no clue that their young child would be the center of attention when they initially arrived to the farm for the event. For her photo op, Nancy stood next to a huge sign that cautioned visitors to keep their distance from the confined animals. The proud papa pulled out the family's shiny new camera, centered the lens on his gorgeous daughter, and shot a photo. His mother-in-law, Nancy, was standing behind him and striking up a conversation with a tourist. It seemed like a lot of people from out of town had come to check out the crocodile farm. That's all everybody could talk about around the water cooler. Given that the tourist attraction was scheduled to depart in a few days, it was understandable why the place was so jam-packed. People often become disoriented due to the high volume of foot traffic. They hadn't seen their daughter during the few minutes they spent chatting with the guest. It was clear to Nancy's parents, who watched her in silence, that their daughter was no longer enjoying herself. They finally gave out, and she slumped down on the floor to rest her weary legs. Looking to her left, Nancy saw an opening in the rusty fence. Despite the fact that it wasn't huge, she seemed to be able to pass through. The direction of its continuation intrigued her. Only long grace was legible through the crack. Nancy pondered the mystery of her gracefulness. She whirled around and yelled and waved at her parents, but they didn't pay any attention. She tried to get their attention again and again, but ultimately gave up. A groan of exasperation escaped Nancy's lips. To stare at her was something she desperately desired. Returning her attention to the hole, Nancy knelt down and began to crawl. She wasn't particularly petite, but she wasn't huge either. She continued to stoop down, exposing her neck to the fence's jagged edges and her clothes to the resulting snags. Nancy kept yanking on herself and tore a little swatch of her skirt in the process. She crept a little farther because she was curious about what was further than tall grass. When she got back up, she noticed that dirt had adhered to her knees and hands. Soon as Nancy started walking toward it, there was a loud splash. A vast body of murky water was first all she could make out. As she proceeded a bit farther, the girl had the impression that she wasn't completely alone. Certainly she wasn't. She had, unbeknownst to her, entered the park's biggest crocodile exhibit. The reptiles might be seen either lounging in the water or hidden in the grass. All the crocodiles stirred as they saw the kid. There were at least a few of them in there, and the tiniest one was still bigger than tiny Nancy. People on the other side of the gate quickly realized that a little girl, no older than 5, was alone with a dozen crocodiles. After they finished chatting to the stranger, her parents immediately started looking for her. They thought Nancy may have gotten separated from her group amid the confusion. When a visitor said that there was a youngster in one of the cages, Nancy's parents' worries reached a fever pitch, and they hurried over to the cage immediately. Word on the street was that this was only one of several outlandish performances available. That accounted for why nobody was rushing to the young girl's aid. Before Nancy's mother yelled, everything was peaceful. "That is my little girl. Please, someone assist." The lady sobbed in a state of terror. Nancy's dad sprinted to the gate and made a futile attempt to scale it. He couldn't have pulled himself over if he had been stronger. He, too, started to cry out for assistance, his voice cracking with anxiety. Seemed like all the tourists were too shaken up to do anything. The crocodiles were approaching nearer and nearer to the wailing parent's daughter, and they couldn't take their eyes off her. Soon after, someone else started yelling for assistance. The situation was so serious that a few individuals began to make their way out of the mob, in search of personnel or someone bold enough to rescue the youngster. No one, however, was ready to risk their lives by entering the crocodile's lair in order to save the youngster. But what the crocodiles did once they cornered Nancy was completely out of this world. Neither of the crocodiles made a move to attack, despite being so close to a tasty meal. These formidable beasts have a reputation for intimidating onlookers and powerfully imposing their will. All of us are doing is looking at the young child. It had been about a minute, and the crocodiles still hadn't moved. A guy chose to leap the fence at that precise time. It's likely he understood the crocodiles, although still deadly, were not in the mood to attack. He made his way through the mass of reptile carcasses strewn around the cage and sprinted to the little girl, Nancy, whose eyes were watering. When Nancy reached his reach, she immediately reached up and encircled him in her arms. The father scooped up the child and raced back to the barrier. The crocodiles shifted as though free from a spell. They disappeared into the background like statues. They ran after the guy and Nancy. Nancy started crying when she saw the crocodiles pursuing them. The gathering became more boisterous. Some people yelled, while others sobbed. At last, the young guide made it to the enclosure's perimeter gate and carefully pushed the girl over it. There was a near approach from the crocodiles, but the guy outran them. He grabbed the fence with both hands and climbed over. There was a loud impact when his back impacted the floor, but he didn't appear to worry. The guy, though, just grinned. He was secure. Additionally, he protected the kid from harm. People started clapping all around him. The horrified crowd witnessed the unfolding horror with their breath caught in their throats. The crisis was past, and no one had sustained serious injuries. Upon seeing their daughter in distress, Nancy's parents rushed over to comfort her. They were frustrated with themselves for losing track of Nancy, but pleased to have found her again. It was several decades ago that these events occurred. New regulations on the usage of exotic animals in shows have been implemented since then. To further reduce the likelihood of this happening to minors, further safeguards have been implemented. However, parents should constantly be on the lookout for their kids while they're in an unusual environment. We're lucky that there was a hero to save the day. When nobody else would, this guy took the initiative. While the girl did learn her lesson, she also realized that there are wonderful individuals in the world who would go to extraordinary lengths to assist those in need. Where did you suppose the young girl was going to end up? If you thought it was a good read, a like and a subscribe would be much appreciated. To get an alert when the next video is released, please ensure that the notification toggle is turned on. Hope to meet you again soon.